Today, I am really excited to introduce a new skill called environmental control. This is an evidence-based skill that has been quite helpful for athletes. There are many aspects to our environment that can impact our behavior. These include people, places, situations, and activities. For example, consider your ability to study in the library with little noise, compared to your ability to study while you're sitting next to your roommates, who are watching your all-time favorite movie.
The second scenario would be a lot harder. I'd honestly probably end up waiting until after the movie was over to actually study.
Exactly. The second scenario has a lot of environmental aspects that make it difficult to maintain that behavior. So today, we are going to spend some time identifying the environmental cues that impact your ability to stay consistent with your goals. On your primary goals sheet, you mentioned that you would like to maintain optimal nutrition, maintain optimistic thoughts, and improve your sport performance. For these goals, you and I are going to create a list of people, places, situations, and activities that impact your behavior in relation to these goals. We are going to create both a goal-consistent list, which identifies cues that increase goal-consistent behavior, as well as a goal-inconsistent list, which identifies cues that increase goal-inconsistent behavior. Once we have both lists, we are going to use them to discover and practice strategies for managing these cues. What are your thoughts on our plan today?
I think it sounds like a good idea. It seems really logical, and I think bringing awareness to different triggers will help me be more intentional with my surroundings.
Great work. It looks like you have a lot of items listed. I see that you identified the training room as one of your goal-consistent cues. How does this particular place help you facilitate goal achievement? What do you like about it?
Well, whenever I spend time in there, I'm way more likely to do the little things, like stretching, icing, and practicing mindfulness. Basically, all of the stuff to make sure I'm taking care of my body and my mind. If I don't stop by the training room, I'm honestly probably going to skip that stuff for the day. I mean, if I'm getting a passive treatment, why not throw on mindfulness audio? It just makes things really convenient.
It sounds like you use your time really well and efficiently when you're in that environment. Is there anything else you like about it?
I really enjoy spending time with my teammates and the training staff. It helps me feel more connected, which I think motivates me even more. It's a way to spend time with them while still being productive and taking care of yourself.
That is really well said. Any other benefits for this one? How might this cue help with your goal of being more optimistic?
That's a good question. Doing the little stuff consistently makes me feel more confident, which causes me to worry less. I definitely notice less what-if thoughts. One of my big worries is that I may re-injure myself and be out for additional games. But when I'm consistently taking care of my body, the thought of re-injury is less front and center in my mind. I also think I feel good about myself, so I tend to be less self-critical on those days.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like there are a lot of goal-consistent cues: the training room itself, the people typically in the training room, and the training room activities, all of which really help to increase your goal-consistent behavior. It also sounds like this cue helps with a variety of your listed goals.
Yeah, I guess it does help in a lot of ways. No wonder I'm so productive there.
Tell me a little about social media. What do you like or dislike about this? What about this activity is inconsistent with your goals?
I guess I like it because it's funny and entertaining. I wrote it as a goal and consistent activity because I think I waste a lot of time doing it when I could be working towards some of my other goals. I also think that it sometimes triggers comparisons, which causes me to criticize myself.
Tell me more about the impact of those comparisons.
I mean, people always post their best selves on social media, so I guess it sometimes causes me to feel inadequate.
When you feel inadequate, what does that lead to?
Like I said, a lot of self-criticism. It honestly causes me to get pretty down on myself.
In those moments when you feel down on yourself, what do you find yourself doing?
Sometimes I look more at social media, almost in a reassurance-seeking way. This is obviously unhelpful because it makes me compare even more. Also, in those moments, I feel less motivated and productive. Honestly, sometimes I'll just have a couple beers and order some takeout.
That's really good insight. So, I'm hearing that social media causes a lot of unhelpful thoughts, which can trigger a negative mood state. Then, these uncomfortable emotions often lead to goal inconsistent behaviors. As you mentioned, It sounds like the motivation to do the little things decreases, you are less intentional about your nutrition, and overall, you get a bit out of sync with your process.
Yes, exactly. And then the next morning, I feel guilty about how I spent the evening. So I just start to beat myself up even more. And then it's like the entire cycle happens again.
I definitely think it's important for us to talk about how to manage some of these uncomfortable thoughts and emotions in future sessions. However, for today's purposes, it sounds like scrolling through social media holds a lot of risk. I wonder if we should look at changing your use of it.
No kidding. It doesn't seem worth it when we map it out like this.
I think we can benefit from either limiting your involvement with this cue or creating boundaries around it to ensure you aren't exposed to the content that precipitates this process. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really good idea. I'd like to be more intentional with my use of social media. I know there are certain platforms and accounts I follow that hold more risk than others.
Awesome. Let's finish reviewing the other cues you listed, and then we will circle back and begin brainstorming some of these strategies. As you mentioned earlier, spending time in the training room is really helpful and keeps you on track with a lot of your goals. How might you protect that time in your schedule?
Well, I am going to make sure to not schedule anything within the 2 hours after practice is over. That way, I don't have to rush through that step in my process. I'm also going to make a priority to come in on off days instead of saying I'm going to do stuff on my own at home. I am always more productive when I'm here.
Those sound like some great strategies. Also, I'm really glad your trainer was able to join us for this part of our meeting. Kenny, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to give you a chance to weigh in here. Do you have any thoughts on how to continue helping TJ optimize his time in the training room?
Well, first and foremost, it's really helpful for me just to know how important this is for you. I know the training room can get busy at certain points throughout the day. As you figure out this schedule, make sure to communicate it with me, and I will do my best to ensure you have the appropriate space and staff available to meet your needs. I will also try and communicate with you when we are a bit overloaded to give you a heads up.
You mentioned earlier in the session that you want to be more intentional with your social media use. Let's think about how we want to strategize your exposure to this cue. What do we want to put into place here?
Okay, well, first and foremost, I probably should not look at it when I'm already feeling down. Now that I think about it, I actually think those are the scenarios I use it more often because I'm trying to distract myself.
That's a great start. In those moments, instead of using social media, what else could you do?
I don't really know. I guess there is a bunch of other stuff I could do.
I wonder if that would be a good opportunity to review your goal consistent cue list to see if there is any way you could use those items to your advantage.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will definitely do that.
All right, so first, you're going to check in with yourself to see what your mood is like prior to using. What other strategies do we want to use?
I think I'm going to deactivate my Instagram for a while. I find myself comparing most often on that platform.
That's a great idea. It's certainly worthwhile to give that a try and see if it makes a significant impact on the self criticism. Any other thoughts? What about being intentional with when you use it during the day?
Oh, yeah, good point. I probably shouldn't use it within an hour of going to bed. When I'm scrolling right before bed, I feel like that is the time where it is most risky.
Great point. What might you do instead of scrolling?
I could do some of my goal consistent behaviors like listening to a podcast or reading for fun.
You've done a great job throughout today's session. For your homework this week, I want you to intentionally plan a fun, goal consistent activity. I know that is somewhat of a broad category, but what comes to mind?
Let me think about that. Well, going back to my goal of optimizing my nutrition, one of my teammates has had the idea of getting a group of us together to do a virtual cooking class. A lot of us want to begin meal prepping, but most of us don't even know how to boil water. I think that would be fun and probably funny.
That's a fantastic idea. It sounds like it will be a great start for meal planning, and I love that you will be able to spend some time with your teammates. Hope you all make some delicious food. We will review how it went during our next session. Thank you so much for keeping track of the time you spent with these cues. I know of the cues we discussed during our last appointment with social media. Do you remember some of the strategies you identified to help minimize the impact of this cue?
Definitely. I actually deactivated my Instagram immediately after our session. Since it's not on my phone, it's honestly been pretty easy to avoid. I'm not really tempted to download it. I also mentioned I was going to avoid social media if I was in a negative headspace, and that I would try to not use it prior to bed.
Great memory. And it's great to hear that you successfully deactivated Instagram. It looks like you use social media almost every day. To what extent were you able to use those strategies?
I think I did a good job of checking in with myself and my emotions before getting on it. I actually made my phone wallpaper say stop and check, so it would be a bit of a reminder. I turned off my notifications so it forced me to see the background before entering any of my apps.
Wow, that's brilliant. I love that you thought of more strategies throughout the week. You're really working hard at this.
Thanks, that feels good to hear. But I did less well with the no scrolling before bed strategy.
That's certainly understandable. Last session, it sounded like that was a pretty well ingrained habit. Tell me about what happened there.
To be honest, when I finally got in bed, I didn't really have the energy to read. I just wanted to turn off my brain and look at my phone.
I completely understand that. Maybe replacing it with reading seems like too big of a jump for right now. When you did use your phone prior to sleep, how often did you find it to be unhelpful or goal inconsistent?
It definitely continues to have an impact. It causes me to stay up a bit later. I also noticed some comparisons a couple of the nights, which also did not help with falling asleep.
So, I'm hearing that this cue, prior to bed, continues to have an impact, even while incorporating some of the other strategies we discussed, like checking in with your mood or avoiding Instagram. It also sounds like being able to turn off your brain is important. How can we reconcile this?
I think I should find some other activities that are less unhelpful, but that still allow me to turn off my brain.
That's a great compromise. What are you thinking?
Maybe I could try watching some YouTube videos. I'd still be looking at my phone, but at least I'm not on social media. I also need to research some podcasts that are more storytelling than informational.
Those are great alternatives. Let's try those out for the next week and check in on them next time.